What about, was rest a priority for this week after the other night's game? Do you think that your players need to rest more than anything else? Or?
No, we have a lot of routines that we follow, and we stuck with the routine. We played on Tuesday, we took off Wednesday, we practiced yesterday. We'll practice today and play tomorrow.
So how'd you see them react in practice yesterday?
I thought we had a very good practice.
Jim, this might be a tough question to ask, but is there anything in particular that's been more difficult this year for you with this team than maybe some past seasons at UM? You know, maybe, I know it's a young team, anything that sticks out to you?
I found it interesting the way you asked that. You said this might be a tough question to ask. I thought in a situation like that, you would say this might be a tough question to answer. So whether it's a tough question to ask or not, I don't know. But the answer is, I think coming into the season, there was a lot of expectations based on circumstances. And the one thing I was very concerned about was we're a lot younger than we'd like to be, or that our history has shown when we're older, we're really good. When we're younger, it's how quickly the young guys can really adapt to the college game and the level of competition they're going to face in the ACC. And what we found was, thought the young guys did a really good job in the non-conference, and maybe that level of competition we were really ready for. And then you look and say, well, does that mean you weren't ready for the ACC competition? That would be the question. I said, well, if we weren't ready, then a lot of teams weren't ready either, because we're right where about a half a dozen teams are, right in the middle of the pack, have played well some nights and haven't played great in other games. And you feel like, okay, we're in the mix. How do we take one step to get closer to where we want to be? And unfortunately, you lose a player like Bruce Brown, who is so vital in so many different categories. And I think we've done a pretty good job. We've won 3 out of 5 without him, but these games normally come down to a possession or two. And you got to finish strong. You know, make a free throw, make a 3, get a stop, get a rebound. I mean, just look at like the Boston College loss. Basically, a 1-and-1 and a free throw, a defensive rebound from winning the game. So it's close, but whether you win by 1 or 20, it's still a W. Whether you lose by 1 or 20, it's still a loss. So what we have to realize is everybody in this league is really good.
Along those lines of the follow-up, I mean, do you sense anyone, maybe the older kids, pressing too hard to do too much instead of playing within the scheme of things, just because it is a young team? You know, you guys have obviously struggled at times.
No, I think we're going through what every team in our league is going through. If you, and this is what I told the team yesterday, if you just look at us, it's very easy to get caught up in what we're not doing. But if you look globally at the whole league and you look at various things, how do you think these other teams feel? And you can use just the games the other night. How do you think Clemson feels after being ahead by 18 and then losing in overtime? Or how do you think Syracuse feels about losing right at the very end of the game at home? We all feel disappointed after a loss. That's natural. What is more difficult and the greater challenge is how do you recover from that and bounce back and play well?
They've had some injuries in the post, and don't you think you guys can maybe take advantage of that? How do you see that?
Of what?
They've had some injuries.
No, yeah, but they're playing the same 5 guys they have all year. I mean, if you look at the history of Syracuse and how many guys they play, and they're the tallest, biggest team in the country. They're like 6'6", 6'6" at the guard, 6'8", 6'9", 7'2" across the front line, and they play that zone defense about as well as anybody in the country plays zone defense. And Angel Rodriguez was by the office yesterday and told me the first time I played against the Syracuse zone, I had no idea how difficult it would be to score against it. And he said it took me a while to really learn, and that experience really helped me the next time.
How important is three-point shooting then tomorrow?
Oh, it's huge because you can get threes. It's really hard to get the ball inside. And even if you get the ball inside to a guy in good position, he's being challenged by 7'2", who very long and athletic big guy.
You mentioned their size on defense, but on offense, in particular with Tyus and Franklin, what they're able to do offensively, what kind of challenges?
You mean going against Chris Likes, who's 5'7", and DJ, who's like 6'2"? That's a challenge for us defensively. Those are not great matchups for us. So we have to rely very heavily on team defense, not just one-on-one, not let them just isolate and try to use their size to their advantage, which they will do and which they do very effectively. We need our team defense to be very, very aware of what's going on and how to help each other. And then they're one of the top 15 offensive rebounding teams in the country, so it's not even the first shot that can beat you, but it's the second chance points that they get. Like a guy like O'Shea Brissett is an outstanding rebounder at both ends of the court, and he's a 6'8" guard.
I guess you kind of touched on this. I was just going to say, what else is it? Always hear about their 2-3 zone, but what else is it about Syracuse that makes them so difficult? You just mentioned the offensive rebound. Is there another factor in there?
Well, their size in the zone is a real challenge to get good shots against. At the other end of the court, their offense is geared towards utilizing their size at the guard position. You have Tyus Battle averaging over 20 points a game, actually 22 points a game in the last 5. You have O'Shea Brissett, who's averaging 16-something in the last 5. You have Franklin Howard, who's their point guard and distributor, and he's averaging almost 15 a game. So those 3 guys combine for about 75 to 80% of their points. And they are bigger than us by a foot, by 4 inches, and by 3 inches at the 3 positions.
With what has come out with Jonathan Augustine, how he, the charges got dropped, do you have anything to say on that in association with
No, my attorneys handle all that.
What's the team mood? You talked the other day about how we're going to bounce back. It's going to be interesting to see how the team does after 2 losses. What, just in the last few days, how have you sensed the team's sort of mental?
Well, we took Wednesday off, and yesterday we had a very good practice, and I thought we were in good spirits and ready to compete.
Have you talked to Dewan?
Yeah, I talked to Dewan yesterday. Coach Caputo talked to him as well.
Mm-hmm. What does he say? Or what do you guys think is?
Well, one of the things I told him yesterday, if you look specifically at the Virginia game, I told him a story about Tanya Jakiri got very frustrated because he didn't score much against Virginia. So I asked Dewan if he knew who Dick Bennett was, and he said no. I said, well, he's Tony Bennett's father. And he said, well, who's Tony Bennett? And I said, well, that's the coach of Virginia. I said, and in the pack line defense, the originator is Dick Bennett. And one of their first principles is don't let a big man beat you. So their whole defensive philosophy starts inside out as to how to guard big guys. And if there is a big guy who could score against you, they'll double team him in what we call 4-5 trapping, big on big. When we played Virginia 2 years ago, when Tanya Jakiri was a senior, I warned the players not to post feed, because if they did, they were going to double team Tanya, and it was going to be very difficult for him to score in that situation. And we ended up losing the game, and Tanya was really upset with me. Coach, you need to let them throw it to me, and then I'll kick it out for really good shots. And I said, well, based on what I've seen other teams do, they've post-fed and got double-teamed, ended up a turnover. But if we play them again, which we did in the ACC tournament, I'll tell the guys. And we did. We post-fed to him, and he caught it 5 times in the first half. The first 4 were turnovers, and the 5th was a bad shot that he had no chance of making. So from a coaching standpoint, you know what the strength of the opponent is and what they do really well. So it was going to be very, very difficult for our big guys to have big games unless, and this is when you're ball screening and rolling, if the guards can hit you on the roll, now you're not playing against 2 guys. You're playing against the help defense, and you got to be able to protect the ball and finish against a guard or a perimeter player. And we threw it to our guys on the roll, I don't know how many times in the first half, but a number of times, and we either missed it or it ended up a turnover. In Buka's case, he scored a couple of times off that, but in the second half he ended up charging. You have to be very skilled as a big man to play against Virginia. Your size is not nearly as important as your skill, because when you roll and you catch it, the help defense is there, and you've got to make a decision as to try to score or pass it. And if you're in the low post and you get trapped, you have to have the ability to find an open man, and that requires very good passing skills. And we showed our players video leading up to it about this is what it's going to look like. And it's not us, it's not our players, it's Virginia's strength. It's what they do. Just like going against Syracuse, it's the zone. It's what they do. They're really good at this.
With that being said, just the contrasting styles defensively for your players, the challenge in the same week, 2 different defenses, but 2 challenging defenses. What kind of challenge is it for your players to make that switch?
Really hard. It is. It's very, very difficult. It's what makes the ACC. That's probably why the ACC teams do so well in the NCAA tournament, because if they face a team they've never seen before, maybe a West Coast team or a team in the Midwest that you don't even get to watch on TV, and all of a sudden you're playing them and they play a particular defense, chances are there's somebody in our league that is playing that way. And you can prepare your players by telling them, look, this team is a lot like Syracuse, or this team is a lot like Virginia, or this team's a lot like Duke. Now, I'm not saying about the players, the personnel, the style of play. And because there's so many unique styles in our league, it prepares you well for postseason.
How fine is the line between getting your players to respect something like Syracuse's zone and not fearing?
Yeah, it's hard. There is no greater teacher than experience. You have to play against the defense to figure it out. And you don't figure it out in the first 5 minutes. A few years ago, we played Syracuse up at the Carrier Dome, and we ran a particular offensive set, and we threw the ball to Omar Sherman. If you remember, Omar caught the ball at the elbow the first 3 times and buried 3 jump shots. He was wide open. Now, we had Omar at one elbow and Tanya at the other elbow. We threw it to Omar, and he scored 3 times. For the rest of the game, we couldn't throw the ball to Omar. They overplayed Omar and let us throw the ball to the other elbow, which was Tanya. who caught the ball and had the same shots and opportunity that Omar did. The difference is he missed. So the zone is not just set up where if you find a way to beat it, you have a shooter that you can go to, that zone will adjust after a timeout, and that option will no longer be available to you. And you got to figure out, what do we do next? And that's what Angel was talking about. So the first time I played against it, we ran a couple of things that worked, and then all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. I was like, man, what did they do? Well, they changed the look of the zone. They adjusted. And that's what we're going to see tomorrow. If we have somebody get hot, they'll adjust the zone to accommodate that.
Got one more question? Or none?
Thanks, everybody.